Hey guys, and welcome to this next lecture on how the web works. Now, if you remember in the introduction, I mentioned that I believe most SEO professionals out there don't know the basics of SEO. Now, for me, one of the basics of SEO is understanding how the web works, and it is a fundamental basic. Now, let's make a distinction between the internet and the web. The internet is all-encompassing, and it could involve you browsing your phone to check your latest Twitter feed or watching a movie on your TV via an internet streaming device. But our focus here is the web, because as SEO professionals, the web is our domain. Now, in front of you, you can see a brief overview of how the web works. Now, of course, how the web works is a lot more detailed than the slide that you can see in front of you. But we don't need to worry about that now. What I'm going to do is provide you some resources where you can go and research up yourself on the details of how the web works. So let's start. Now, as you can see in front of you, as I mentioned, is a brief overview of how the web works. So first of all, you have a user. Now that user could be me, it could be you. What does a user do when they want to go to a website? They open up their browser. And most modern browsers have a URL bar at the top that allows you to type in a full web address. But not only that, they also allow you to type in keywords. Now, as SEO professionals, keywords are obviously really important to us. So in our example that we have here, we've got the web address sony.co.uk. Now, the reason why I put that in is because I'm a big fan of Sony and their products have been part of my life, since I was young. So, I wasn't going to choose a different company address. So, let's going back to our example. You're a user, you've opened up your browser, and as I mentioned, most modern browsers allow you to either type in a full web address or a keyword. So, for example, you could type in Sony, and the browser would auto-complete the web address. Because it's such a popular domain on the web, the browser would most likely know that and have it stored in their backend system. But what happens then? What does the browser do to display the website to you? So it goes through a series of steps. The first thing it does, it takes this whole web address here, which is called a domain, and sends it to a DNS server. Now, what does DNS stand for? It stands for Domain Name System. Now, what's that? And what's server? Well, a server is just a computer, but in internet terms, it's called a server because it serves something. It gives something back to whatever is requesting something from it. So in our example, it's a browser. Now, these DNS servers are scattered all over the web. Now, what do? Well, they actually take this full domain name here, which is in human readable form, and you know that human readable form in computer language means letters. So it takes this domain here and matches it with an IP address. Why does it do that? Because a website is not actually stored with a human readable domain like this, or in human readable form like this. It's stored in a series of digits, which is known as IP, Internet Protocol. So the DNS server takes this domain name and matches it to the IP. Now, that IP address is actually where the website is stored. So what happens next? After the matching of the domain name to the IP address, it sends it back to the browser. It provides a response. So the browser makes a request to the DNS server. The DNS server translates that domain and matches it to the IP address and provides a response to the browser. What does the browser do then? Well, with this information, the browser now knows where that web address, i.e. sony.co.uk, is stored. So then it goes to the actual server where the website is stored. Now, this server is typically going to be owned by the actual company that owns the website. So the browser makes a new request to this server. Now this server gets the request and it provides a response to the browser, which is typically the full website with all these images, all this content. Now you as a user can now browse sony.co.uk in total, and that is the typical way of how the web works. Of course, there's more details. Of course, sometimes you might not want the full web address. Maybe sometimes it's a PDF or an image that you're looking for. And actually, most of the time, especially with Google, people don't go to the home domain or the base domain. They typically go to sony.co.uk/mobiles because they could be looking for mobiles. Now, what the server does in that instance, it returns what the user is looking for by way of the URL path, and then this just displays that page alone. But in a nutshell, that is how the web works. Now, finally, I just want you to refocus on these two terms that I mentioned, request and response. These are actually technical terms in internet terminology. A request is when, for example, a browser makes a request, and a response is when that thing that is requested from returns what is been requested of it. Okay, so in our example, it's a website. So I hope you've understood in a nutshell how the web works. Now, of course, we're going to be learning a lot more, and I'm going to be providing you a lot more resources where you can go and research up in detail and find out for yourself how the web works. So keep on watching as we've got a lot to learn.